Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be moving away from the discussion of robotics, and instead we will be focusing on the Python language. To run Python code, you will be needing an IDE, which is an integrated development environment. To get one of these, you can go on, there's a bunch of different IDEs that you could use. You can even use a text editor if you want, but the ones I would suggest you use are the Python IDLE, which is the official Python IDE, or you can, in my case, I'll be using the Visual Studio Code from Microsoft. Either of these works is fine, but I'll be using Visual Studio Code. Okay, without further ado, if you guys do not have any questions, I guess I can get into the presentation. Let's see if there's any questions. There doesn't seem to be anything, so I guess I'll just get into it. Okay. What is Python? Python is a object-oriented programming language that was written by this guy right here. I will not attempt to pronounce his name because I'll probably butcher it. When he created this language, he created it as a sort of pastime project. He didn't intend it to become anything big. He just wanted it to be a simple and easy-to-use programming language for just dabbling and creating small projects. And he wanted to be a little bit strict and a little bit less strict and more flexible than comparable languages like Java, for example. Anyways, it ended up getting really big, and it started being used by, as you can see, many programmers all over the world. A good example of this, for example, is Instagram. Instagram, they wrote their entire backend of that website is written in Python. So one thing that people always criticize Python for is how slow it is. But as you can see, with a bit of optimization, it can even run an entire website that is used by billions of people all over the world. Let's move forward. What are the advantages of using Python over, for example, anything else like Java or C#? Advantages are it is easy to use, learn, and write. As you'll be seeing in a little bit, Python, it takes a lot less lines to do the same thing in Python as you would in a comparable language. Another thing is there's thousands of libraries available for use that have been written in Python. Python's community is huge. There's so many people learning and helping others out for Python, and they wrote these really useful libraries. Some examples include Pandas, which is used for data manipulation and analysis. We have TensorFlow, which is used for artificial intelligence and machine learning, and we have OpenCV, which is used for computer vision. Obviously, there's many more libraries, but these are just a few notable examples. Like I mentioned earlier, Python, it has a huge community. Therefore, there's extensive documentation and there's a helpful community. For example, if you have an error or there's something you're trying to do in Python but you do not know, you can just go into the community and you can just ask them. 99.9% of the time, someone has already tried to do what you tried, and their question has already been answered. So, it's very helpful. Let me check if there's any questions. Nope, there's nothing. Perfect. Now let's move on. Now let's discuss the differences of Python compared to some other language, for example. Okay, let's get into it. The first thing is it uses indentation instead of curly braces for bodies of programs. For example, as you can see here, we have a for function. I'll be discussing this later in today's presentation, but for the time being, as you can see here, we have a for function, and immediately after there is an indentation as well as a program, which is the print function. There is no use of curly brackets. And Python knows, it's very intelligent, and knows that as soon as there's an indentation, that's what this code is going to, that's the code that follows the for loop. While in Java, you need to show it using these braces. As you can see, there's a brace after the for function. and it shows the print line function, as you can see here. Another thing you have to keep in mind is there is no need for simple programs to be in a class. In Python, for example, you don't need to write any classes to write just a simple code like hello world, for example. In Java, everything, like all of the code that you write, it needs to be written in a class. The reason I'm using Java is like an example. As you can see, I'll be referencing Java a lot. And here is because I heard that the students in Sohar University, the ones that are watching this video, they've already learned Java or a little bit of it, so it's a good reference so they can have a good comparison to Python. Anyways, back to what I was saying. There's also a lack of semicolons after each statement in Python. For example, in most languages, C, C++, or C#, Java, and all these other languages, every single statement that you write needs to have a semicolon after it so that the compiler knows that the line is done and you have to move on to the next line. But in Python, it doesn't really need that. All you need to do is just add the function and that's it. As you can see, Python is very simple. There's a lot of things that you don't really need to do that other languages are more strict about. Another thing is variable types do not need to be set in Python. When you create a variable in Python, and I'll be showing that in a little bit, you don't really need to set the type of the variable, for example, like string or integer or whatnot. You just write the name of the variable equals whatever thing you're trying to create. And Python is very intelligent. It can automatically detect what type of variable you're trying to create. And finally, there is overall simpler syntax for most of the operations. As you can see here, these two functions, they actually do the same thing, or they should at least. But as you can see, Python does it in 2 lines, while Java, it takes 10 lines to do it. So you can see that Python is a lot more compact and a lot easier to write than something like Java, which is why I think it's a good introductory programming language to programming. Okay, now let's move on to data types. We have several different data types that can be used in Python. First of all, we have integers. These are numbers that do not have a decimal after them. So for example, the name here is var1, which is just the name of a variable, a dummy variable, and this is equal to 1. You can make this equal to any number, 1,000, 2, 5, anything. Then we have strings. These are, I guess you can think of them as text. And when you want to create text, you cannot just equal it to whatever you want, because the compiler might think you're trying to run some code. So instead, if you want to write some text, you'll have to use these speech marks. And as you can see here, another dummy variable equal to, this is a string. And as you can see, there's these speech marks to show that this is a string. You can also do this using this singular speech mark as well. Python treats them sort of both strings, while in something like Java, for example, double speech marks, they are equal to strings, and a singular speech mark is equal to a character. Python, as you can see at the bottom here, there are no characters in Python. There's only strings with a length of 1. There's another thing that Python tries to simplify. It's the fact that there really isn't really a specific character type, and instead you can just write a string that only has one letter in it. We also have floats. These are like integers, but they have the decimal after them. So 1.0, 1.9, or whatnot. And then we have this type called booleans. Booleans, basically, they're just only 2 outcomes for it. It's a true or a false statement. The booleans will be useful later when we get into conditional functions and loops and that sort of thing. Basically, all you need to know for now is it's just a true or a false statement. We also have lists. Lists, as you can tell from the name, they're just a list of items. So for example, if I want to have a list of items, I can just start with these 2 square brackets, and I can just list whatever I need inside. So I can have a list of 1, 5, and 7. These are 3 integers. And we also have tuples. Tuples are like lists, but they're not changeable. They're not mutable. So for example, when you create a tuple, You cannot append to it. You cannot like add or change the contents of it. It just stays the same. And I already mentioned earlier that there are no characters in Python, so I guess we can move on. Okay. Here, let's see. Mutability. Mutability is, how can I explain this? Basically, a mutable object is something that you can change, and once you change it, it stays in the same address. For example, right, let's say I have an integer of 5, right, and I want to add 3 to it. Once I add 3, it becomes 8, obviously, but in Python, once you do this addition, it will store the final value in a different address in memory, and then point the variable to that instead. While a mutable data type is a data type that you can change, but it does not actually does not change the memory address. It stays the same. I'll switch to VS Code real quick so I can demonstrate this. Let me just quickly change that. Okay, I have a few questions. Let's see. I have to. What is the error that you're having? Can you please let me know? I can try and help out in a little bit. We could test it out right now to see if the lists can have different data types. I'm not sure. I never tested that before, but I think they could. We'll find out real quick. Can the variable start by an uppercase letter? It should be able to. And where can I use the tuples? Tuples, they can be used anywhere where you'd like use a list, but the only difference between them is that they are immutable. You cannot really add or change them. They're fixed. But you could use them wherever you use a list. And when you use a list, for example, you can use them to store objects. You can use them to store like integers or that sort of thing. Okay, let me quickly get into the program real quick. As you can see here, this is Visual Studio Code. If you want to start using it, you click on up here, File, and then you click on Open Folder. I'll be using here this one. I'm going to call it Python demo. You can use anything, any folder name if you want, and you can just have it. I have these things here, just stuff from previously that I might use throughout this presentation. And if you want to create a new file, you have to right-click, New File, and you can give it any name you want. I'm going to call it presentation.py. This is the file extension for Python files, and you need to use it, .py, for all of your files, for Python anyways. When you create this file, there should be sort of like a pop-up here. I don't have it because I already went through this earlier, but it will ask you to install the Python extension for VS Code. So you can just click it and install it quickly, and you can come back to the programming session. But you should have this set up by now, I think. Anyways, let's quickly write some variables. For example, here I wrote variable equal to 1, and I'll have another variable, variable 2. I'm going to make it equal to a string. This is a string. And let me quickly test out this question from one of the commenters quickly. Let me see. Array is equal to, let's see, 1 string. Let's see quickly if it prints. Yeah, as you can see here, you can use multiple different types. For example, you can use a string and you can use an integer. Let me quickly add a, what do you call it, a float as well. As you can see, Python supports it. So you could, if you want, you could just mix them together and it would work which is fine. Now I want to demonstrate mutability. Let me do this quickly and real quick. We have this function. Is it a bit small? Can you guys not see? Let me just. Hopefully this is a bit better. Oh no. Can you guys see this a bit better now? All right. Okay, perfect. Let me quickly get into it again. Yes. So we have this function inside of Python called ID. And this ID, it allows you to see the memory location of a variable. So let me quickly print the ID. ID of this variable here called var. And once I do that, I will, I will append to the variable. So I'm going to add a +1 to this variable, so it should say 2. Okay? And let me quickly print this variable as well to show you the difference before and after. And let me change it, variable plus equal to 1. Okay, let me just quickly explain this part here. If you want to append, or if you want to like add or increment something in Python, let's say an integer here, you take this variable plus equal to the, the number that you want to increment with. So what this would do is it would take this value here, which is 1, and then it will add 1 to it and then store that value back into the variable. So variable should now have a value of 2. Let me just quickly print it again. And you can see this is the code. And then I will print the ID again. Var. Yeah. Okay. Let's print it. As you can see here, all right, this is the original value and this is the incremented value. That's how you increment things in Python. And check these IDs out real quick. As you can see, they're different, right? At the end, this one is like this, and this one is this way. They are a bit different. And why is that, all right? Because in Python, integers are immutable. It means that you cannot really change the variable itself if you want to change it. You have to create a new variable with the new value. So what Python did is it created a new variable with the value of 2, stored it in a different address, and made this var variable point to that address. Let's try it with a list real quick. So I'm going to create a list. Wait, I think I have one already. Yes, I have a list right here. So array. Let's print it real quick. Print array. This is it, print array. And then we will print the ID. Print ID array. And then if you want to add something to an array, you'll have to use another function called append. So what I'll do is array dot append. This is how you call a function in Python. You need to take the name of the variable, then dot, then append. Then you put brackets, and if you can put in any value that you want. I want to add a 30 to the list. So once I do this, I will print the array itself, and then I will print its ID. As you can see here, this is perfect. You can see that this is the array, and as you can see, this is its ID before, and then we change it. We add this value here, and then we print the ID again. As you can see here, the ID has stayed the same. And you'd ask yourself, why is that? This is because an array in Python, it is mutable. It means you can make changes to this variable, and it will use the same address. You will not actually create a new object. Okay. Let me quickly go back to the slides. Seeing some questions. What does the ID do? I explained this. The ID, it gives you the functions. What do you call the location? Where it's stored in the memory. You know, a computer it stores all of its variables in the, let's say, the RAM, for example. That's a form of memory, and it tells you the exact location where this is stored. Like, we don't really need to use this location for much. I'm just using it as a sort of demonstration, as to like to show you that some things are mutable and some things are not. As just a demonstration. Okay, let's go back to the slides. As you can see here, integers, strings, floats, booleans, and tuples or tuples. These are immutable, while the mutable data types are lists and user-defined classes. User-defined classes, these we will be getting into in another presentation. But you just need to know that they exist for the time being. Let's get into operators. There are several different operators that can be used in Python. There's different types of operators. There is conditional operators, there is arithmetic operators. And what conditional operators are used for is they check if something, they compare two objects. As you can see here, we have equals, not equals, more than, less than, and that sort of thing, right? As you can see here, they compare two objects. For example, I have two numbers. I have the number 5 and the number 3. Is number 5 not equal to number 3? And the answer is obviously yes, they're not equal. So if you use this operator here, not equals, then the operator itself will return true. It will return a boolean of true, meaning that, yes, this function is true. And you'll see in a little bit why this is helpful. Like I said earlier, booleans are very useful in conditional functions and loops. We also have on the right side as well, we have these. These are the arithmetic operators, and they allow you to do mathematics in Python. So for example, you have a number, you want to add something to it. So you take the variable and then you do plus, what do you call it, number. For example, I have a variable of 1 plus 3. You can subtract, you can multiply, you can divide, and you can do floor division. What's the difference between these two is when you divide two numbers, there's a chance that the result is not an integer. All right, let's say I have 5 divided by 3. And 5 divided by 3 is not an integer, it's a float. So what floor division does is it will round it down to the nearest digit, the nearest whole number. And we also have exponentiation. This is, for example, I want to take 2 to the power of 3. So if I want to take 2 to the power of 3, I would do 2, and then we would do 2 of these stars, and then 3. And then we also have a modulus. A modulus, it gives you the remainder of a division. So if I want to divide 5 by 3, and then I use a modulus instead of a division there, what would be the remainder of 5 divided by 3? The answer should be 2, right? Because 3 can go into 5 once, and you'll have a remainder of 2. So this is what the modulus is used for. And finally, as you can see here, this is something I explained earlier. X plus equal to 3 is the same as x is equal to x plus 3. What x plus equal to 3 does is it takes the variable, it appends to it that value, which is plus 3, and then it makes it equal to back to the original variable. So it's just a shortcut that programmers use, like the less you have to type, the better, obviously. Let's move on. There's a lot of stuff I compared here. I already mentioned earlier, operations on numbers. All previously mentioned operators can be used on numerical variable types, such as integers and floats. Yes, and you can compare them together, and as you can see, it gives a Boolean result if true. I already explained the arithmetic operators as well, and like I said earlier, yes, some of these, they don't always result in let's say, an integer. Sometimes they result in a float if you're trying to divide two not divisible, integers. And as I said here, you can, you can use this shortcut here. Okay, let's move forward. You can do these same operations on strings as well. So for example, I have this string here. I have hey, that's a string, and then I have everyone, that's another string. If I want to combine these strings together to form a singular string, I will use the plus operator, which results in hey everyone. And then we have a multiplication. As you can see here, multiplication, it concatenates the string to itself as many times as the multiplication. So if I have hi, and I multiply it by 5 times, it results in this, as you can see here. Then we have these two other really important functions, which we have split. Split, it takes a string and splits it into a list of words around a specified character. I'll be demonstrating this in VS Code in a little bit, as you can see. For example, here I have hey everyone. This is 2 words. What split does, it splits all of the words in a string and returns them into a list or an array. So each one is its own separate word. And then we have strip. Strip. This one takes a string and removes unnecessary characters at the beginning and the end of the string. I'll be showing also a demonstration of this just now, and you will see why this is useful. It removes any unnecessary things like a comma or a white space or something like that. It removes these extra things. Now I'll switch back to VS Code real quick. Okay. Let's delete all of this. Let me see if there's any questions. Okay, nothing. It doesn't seem like there's any questions, so perfect. Now let's get into the demonstration of the operators. So for example, let me see if I'm going to use 5 is not equal to 7. Let's print this real quick. Let's see what the output is. So you can see true. 5 is not equal to 7. So it outputs true. Let's say if they're equal. Let's see what happens then. It outputs false because obviously 5 is not equal to 7. And let's try the more than or less than. Is 5 more than or equal to 7? It's false. Obviously it's not because 7 is a more than. And if we switch them, it becomes true because 5 is less than or equal to 7. Okay, perfect. Let's see as well. 5 plus 5, for example. See, the answer is 10. And if you want, you can do 5 divided by 3. We'll be getting this, 1.666. And this is a float. Since we don't want that, we will use floor division, which is just 2 slashes here. And then I'll just print it. As you can see, it rounds it down to the nearest integer, which is 1. Now let's get into the operations. Let's get into the operations for the strings. I'm going to create a new string. I'm going to call it var. Let's say hello, comma, everyone. Okay. So I want to just print it. So I just do print and I use var. You see, hello, everyone. Let's say I want to have 2 strings. So I'm going to use var2. I'm going to make another one. My name is Mohammed. So I do var plus var2. So I'm just concatenating them or combining them together using the plus operator. Hello, everyone. My name is Mohammed. You can see here, these 2 strings combined. Now I'm going to use the split and the start methods. So I'm going to create a new variable called array. You can use any names for these variables, by the way. You're not really limited to just using one. So you create array equal to var.split. That's it. That's all you need to do, because you're taking var here, which is a string. You're calling a function called split on it, followed by these two. This signifies that this is a function that does not have any parameters. I'll be discussing parameters and functions later on in the next presentation, so you don't really have to worry about them for now. And now let me print this array. Okay. As you can see here, it takes it and it splits hello and it splits everyone, because the default splitting parameter is a space. So whenever it sees a space, as you can see here, there's a space, it will split them and it will split all of these characters. So for example, if I want to split this one, my name is Mohammed, I will just split var2 and let's see. As you can see here, my name is Mohammed. It splits it around this, which is the space character. Now let's demonstrate the, the start method. As you can see here, this one here, this hello, it has this comma here and I really do not like it. I just want to get rid of this comma. So what I can do is I can use the start method. Also, to access element in an array, as you can see here, I have an array with two elements, hello and everyone. And if I want to access this element, I will need to do the following. I'll need to do the name of the array, which in this case is array, followed by the square bracket. And inside of this is going to be the place of the element in the array. All of the, which we basically call the index. The index in this case, it starts from 0 in Python. Some languages it starts in 1 and that sort of thing, but in Python and most languages, as far as I'm concerned, they start with 0. So this is going to be the 0th element. This is the first element. This is the second, and whatnot. You know, the more elements there are, that's how you access them. So I want to access hello. So I'll be accessing element 0. Let's print it real quick. As you can see, hello was printed. This is because this is our, our first, technically speaking, the 0th or the first element in our array. And this is how you access these arrays. Arrays are very powerful because you can store so many objects in just one space, and then you can access them how you need. So again, like I said earlier, I do not like this comma. So what I'm going to do is I will get rid of it using split and strip, and I'll be using these. This is a function as well. There is a, full stop and type, and I have these two parentheses. And this time we're going to actually use this parentheses, and we put something inside. Inside you have to put a character or a string that you want to get rid of. I will be inputting comma. You have to surround a string, and like I said earlier, always surround strings with these things, these speech marks. And inside of here, you can try to get rid of whatever you don't want. I'm trying to get rid of this comma here. So this is what I will do, and I will print it. As you can see, the comma is gone. If I want to get rid of O and the comma, I want to get rid of this. Let's say I want to get rid of this, LLO, comma. If I do it, as you can see here, it's he. You can remove as many things as you want, but this is how you remove things from a string. I guess that should be it for operations on strings. Yeah, that should be it. Okay, now let's get back into the presentation quickly. Let me just change it real quick. Would the be deleted even if it's in the mid of a word? Yes, it will be. Wait, and no, it will not be deleted if it's at the middle of the word, because it should only be deleted if it's at the start or the end of the word, not in the middle. Okay, let me just change the presentation. Share screen. Okay, you should be able to see the, wait, what? I'm back here. Okay, you should be able to see the presentation again. Perfect. Okay. If, elif, and else functions. If functions are conditional statements needed to perform decisions based on conditions in the program. So, as you can see here, we have an if function, and this is where the conditional operators come into handy. As you can see here, I equal to 0, and if this is true, you do this. If it's not true, you move on to something else, which is elif. In this case here, an if function, it just checks the condition or the boolean, and it will check if it's true or not. If it's true, then it will do the body of the code that is related to it, and if not, it will just skip it and move on to the next if or else or that sort of thing. And it will keep going down until an else is reached or other code is executed. I'll be demonstrating this in VS Code as well in a little bit. Now we'll be discussing while loops. While loops, they're used to repeat a body of code until the while condition becomes false. Here, as you can see as well, we're using the condition I is less than 10. So basically what's happening is it will keep going through this code and it will keep repeating it until I becomes less than 10. And as you can see in this case, the number of iterations is usually not predetermined. Yeah. As you can see here, we have an iterator variable, which is I in this case. And we need to set it to a starting value of anything. It can be 0, it can be 1, it can be 100. In this case, we're going to be starting from 1. And then we have a while loop condition. As you can see here, this is the condition, which is in this case, I is less than 10. And then we have a variable altering statement. Because in a while loop, it will keep going until this becomes false. So you have to alter this variable so it can become false at some point. Because if it doesn't become false, the while loop will never stop. And as you can see here, this is the loop body. Now let's discuss the for loop. For loops, they're used to repeat a body of code for a fixed known amount of times. As you can see, these are quite similar to each other, the while and the for loop. But the for loop, it is fixed amount. And as you can see, it has the same thing. It has the iterator variable, starting value, the ending value, the increment amount, and the body. Okay. Let's go back to the VS Code real quick. See, there's no questions. Perfect. Share screen. Okay, you should be able to see my screen now. Okay, now let's quickly get some an if function already. So I'm going to have a variable. I'm going to call it var, just like every variable I've made so far, and I'll make it equal to 3. I'm going to have an if function. If var is equal to 3, and then you're going to have to use a colon. This specifies, this is really useful for an if function, for a while function, for loops, that sort of thing. This is what you use these for. You'll also be using them when you create functions and classes later in the next presentation. So I'm going to write. This is going to be the code that's going to be executed if this variable is equal to true. I'm going to write print. I'm going to make a string. This value is equal to 3. So let's print it. You can see this value is equal to 3. Because variable 3 is equal to 3, it will print it. So let's change it real quick and let's see what happens. So I'm going to make it equal to 2. I'm going to run it. As you can see, nothing happens. There is no output. This is because 2 is not equal to 3, and therefore it will not really run anything. What if, for example, I don't want to just test one thing. I want to test several things. I will be using a thing called an elif. elif is it's basically a shortened version of else if, and this is how you do it in another language, for example. And here you can put your other condition, and my condition I want it to be equal to var equal to 2. I want to check if this variable is equal to 2, so I'm going to just copy this code real quick to save some time. This value is equal to 2. As you can see, now it checks for 2 and it checks for 3. If you just change these, as you can see. And what if I want to create a, what do you call it, a condition that is true whenever none of these things are true? Okay, wait, I have a question. Let me check. Will it work if I didn't add the colon? No, it will not work. You need to add this colon. Okay, back to the presentation. I'll be using an else function because if neither of these are true, then you have to do this code, as you can see here. I'm going to write, these are kind of annoying. Copy. This value is not equal to 2 or 3. So I'm going to put a value of 4. As you can see, this value is not equal to 2 or 3. If I want to put 9, it's not equal to that. But then if I put in 2, it can detect it, right? Because here it's true, sorry, here, and it will do that. If I put in 3, it can detect it. Now let's quickly create a, what do you call it, a while loop. So we create while, this is the keyword, and we will create another function while, another condition, while I is less than, variable is less than 10. So what I'm going to do is, I'll keep checking this one. If it's less than 10, do this body of code and start over and keep checking and keep doing the code. So I'm going to print the variable var. And then what I need to do is I need to change variable in some way so that this loop doesn't get stuck forever. Var plus equal to 1. This, like I said earlier, it increments the variable by 1. Now let's print it. As you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It keeps printing until it becomes 10. As you can see though, 10, it only prints up to 9. Why does it not print 10? I said it needs to be 10. This is because it's less than 10. It's not equal to 10, it's only less than 10. So the program, it's only checking until it becomes less than 10. So it's going to keep increasing, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Once it reaches 10, it checks this condition here. Is 10 less than 10? Obviously, the answer is no, they're equal. And therefore, it stops executing the while loop before it prints the 10 value. If I want to print 10, I need to do less than equal to 10. See, when I do less than equal to, now it detects if it's equal to, and it becomes 10. Of course, if you don't want to use equal, you can also make it 11. Just increase it by 1. It will also print 10, because 10 is less than 11, so it will be accounted for. Now let's quickly work on a for loop. For I in range. This is how you create a for loop. You use for I in range. And then you do this parentheses. This one is going to be the initial value, the starting one. This is going to be the ending value. And then this is going to be the increment value. And then we use the colon. And then we print I. As you can see here, for I in range, starting from 1 until 10, and incrementing by 1. So let's quickly print it. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 3, 9. Again, the same thing. It only goes less than 10 and not equal to. So if you wanted to reach 10, just make it equal to 11, and boom, it's done. If you want to, you could also go downwards. We can make the starting value as 10. We can make the ending value as 1, and the increment minus 1. When you print it, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. As you can see here, it stops at 2 because 2 is still greater than 1. If you want to make it reach 1, you have to use 0. See, 10, 9, 8, 7. It just keeps going down. You can also do this with the while loop if you want. No one's stopping you. So let me go back to the presentation real quick. What is the function that would convert the list into strings? This function is called split. I showed it earlier. Yes, that's always not less than or equal to 10, and therefore you have to make it less than or equal to, or make it equal to 11. That's correct. Okay, now let's go back to the presentation. Okay, here we have this thing here, inputting and outputting text in Python. Now, unlike in Java, input is a lot simpler since a scanner is not needed. In Java, for example, if you want to output something or input something, you have to use a scanner, and it will scan the the terminal to see if you inputted anything. But in Python, it has this thing built in called input, and you can use this statement here. Oh, sorry. Input statement, and you can put inside these parentheses the question that will ask the user. So I'll write, please enter a number, and of course this is a string, and therefore you use these speech marks. You can also use a print statement. I'm sure this is quite familiar to you guys by now. I've been using it a lot to just demonstrate things. You print, and then you print either a string or anything really. As long as it supports printing, it can print it. And then we have these variables that can be used in an output for more complex and dynamic programming output. As you can see, like in a print function, you can combine a variable as well as just text. I'll be showing this in a little bit in VS Code. And now but for now, we're going to discuss I/O, which is input output from and to text files. These text files, that data can be read from and written to the text files. And this is helpful for storing and processing large amounts of data, and it allows for easy transfer of information to other programs. So in Python, you can create a program that can just go through a bunch of data, and all of the output from that can be stored in a text file. And text files are very useful because they're supported in a wide variety of programs. For example, I can open a text file in a Word document, or I can open it in Excel or these other programs. So this is a nice way to make it into an output that can be read by another program. If you want to read from a text file, you will be needing to create an open statement, and with the text file's name and the read-write type, and then you assign it to an object. This will become your text file object, and from there you can start reading, you can start writing. I'll be showing this in VS Code as well. You will need to invoke the readLine method, and this will get you a line. It's the first and second and subsequent lines in a text file. Then we have strip and split as well. You can use these since the lines in a text file are all strings. So you could use strip and split if necessary to process the line into usable data. Then you need to invoke the write operation on the object if you want to write something to a text file. And then you need to use the close operation after you're done with the text file. So I open a text file, I make some changes, I add, I remove, and whatnot. And once I'm done with it, I need to safely close it. And I will do it using the close operation. Here is an example of something. I'll be showing this just now. So you don't need to see the slide for now, I'll just show it. Okay, that should be the end of the slides. I will switch to VS Code. Share screen. Let's see if you guys can see this. Yes, you can. Okay, so now let's first quickly use the input and the output. So I'll be using input, and I need to store the input somewhere. I'll be storing it in var. Again, like I said earlier, you can use any variable name, and I'm going to make a name. I'm going to make a question. Please input a word. All right. So that's it. That's the function. Input a word. So this is what's going to ask us, and I'm going to make the program echo what I give it, which means I'm going to enter something and the program will just output that thing back to me. So I will just use print. And I'm going to show you where you can combine strings and variables. So I'm going to do your output is like this. And I need to use a plus, because like I said earlier, you can concatenate or combine strings. And I'm going to put a var. Var in this case is a string, because whatever you input in here is considered a string. So once you get the input from the user, you take this and then you combine them. So let's print it and we'll see what happens. Please input a word. I'm going to write, this is a sentence. You see, your output, comma, a colon, equal, not equal, just colon, space, this is a sentence. So it outputs exactly what I write. If I want to write hello world, it outputs hello world. Let's see if there's any questions real quick. Nothing? Perfect. Now let's get into the final topic, which is going to be strings and text files. So if you want to open a text file, you need to, first you can use a variable name. I'll be using file equal to open, and then the name of the text file. You have to make sure that the text file is in the exact same directory as your Python file. So you have to have them in the same folder. As you can see here on the side in VS Code, they all are in the same folder. I have this text file here. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is just going to be a demo text file. And we have an output. This output is going to be empty. And we're going to be filling it with the same output from here and just copying it here. So I'm going to open this Python file. I'm going to open this text file in Python. You need to use, this is basically going to be the name of the file in a string. And you have to make them exact, which is text file.txt. That's the name, as you can see here, that's the name of the text file. Then you use comma, and then make another string with one character, which is the data type. Is it going to be read? Is it going to be a write? In this case, we're going to be reading stuff from here. Okay, let me check. If it's not on the same folder, can we put the exact file path? Yeah, you can definitely do that, but for the purposes of this demonstration, I will just be putting them together. You can just put the file, depending on your computer. For example, you can use C:/user/blah blah blah, that sort of thing, and you can effectively access any file from your computer. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'll just be putting them together. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to open this text file in read mode. This is the syntax. Then I click, and I'm going to create another one. I'm going to open another file. I'm going to call it write. No, write file. So it's really easy to differentiate. Then I'm going to open this file here. I'm going to open it. I'm going to open it output.txt, and I'm going to open it in write mode. As you can see here, there's a difference. This is read mode, which is R, and this is write mode, which is W. And these two parameters are separated by commas. Now I need to create a while loop. This while loop is going to, before that I need to read the line. So if I want to read a line from file, this one here, I'm going to create a new variable called line. Line is equal to file, which is the name of the file that we opened, dot read line, as you can see here. And we use parentheses because this is a function. So file.read line. So now we read the first line, which is this one here. Then we use this line to determine if the text file is finished. I'll be using a while function, like I said earlier. I will be going through every single line in the text file until we reach the end. While line. While line. What does this do is it will, it will go through the entire text file, and it will keep reading it will go through all of it effectively, and it will keep checking until the end of the file is reached. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to what do you call it? Write file. I'll take the text file I'm going to be writing in. I'm going to do dot write. That is the function that I will be using to write this line that I read from here, and I'm going to write that line into the output. So I'm writing this line. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to file.readLine again. Why am I reading a line again? This is because I'm trying to reach the next line. So I read this line, I copy it, and I paste it here using the write line. And then once I read line again, read line, I'm going to move on to the next one. And the loop is going to keep on going. I'm going to move to the next one, copy it, next one, copy, next copy, until the end is reached. Once this one here, this end, which is empty, is reached, it will get out of the while loop. So once this is done, I'm going to have to close my files. So I'm gonna close file and yes, and then I need to close write file dot close. I'm gonna have to close both of these files. So I suppose everyone should be on the same page now. When I click run, what's going to happen is nothing happens here because, as you can write file dot of course, my bad. You need to update the line. When you read the line, you need to update it to line. Let me kill this program real quick. Okay. So as you can see, we have here, we need to update the line, which is line equal to file.readLine. Let's run it this time. As you can see here, now the output has the same as the text file. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Now let me just quickly change something here. Welcome, ladies, and say hello world. Okay. So I change this file, I save it, and then I need to run this program again. I run the program. As you can see, the output also has the same thing as this text file. As you can see, Python is a really powerful language, and there is so much you can do with it. And this is just a small thing, just a small piece of what you can do. So this is how you read files, and then you copy from one file to another. Obviously, you can take this line, you can process it to something else. For example, I can split it, and I can find certain keywords. I can go through an entire text file and find if there is, let's say, was. How many was's are there? Or how many I's? How many letter I's? And you can see how powerful this idea is. Yeah. Let me just quickly check questions. We're not putting it inside the loop. Which one? Why line 6? Which one? This one here, line 6. This is because we are trying to read the next line. First, we read the first line. Then we write it. Then we read the next line. We have to update the line because the loop is going to be here. The loop is never going to reach this line again. And it's going to keep going in a loop. Any more questions? Why not putting what? Well, what are you trying to put inside the loop? Line 3, you have to read the first line. Because if you do not have this line at the start, you don't really have a line to use the condition on. Because if I remove this, what does line mean in this case? Like, there is no line, because you have to create it first, and then you can update it in the loop. Hopefully that makes sense. Any more questions? I guess not. Okay, perfect. That should be it for the demonstration. Thank you guys so much for attending. Of course, we have this form thing you can fill out. So just make sure to go through all of these, what do you call them? All of these presentations and answer the questions, and you can get yourself a certificate. There's also links in the comments, hopefully. And what do you call it? If you need any more help, you can just go through these links in the comments, and that should be it. Thank you guys so much for coming, and have a good day. Bye-bye.